we were speaking about the condition of the Pandavas while being exiled in the forest. So after the 13th year, okay, well, first of all, what happened? They lost their Indraprastha kingdom, and they were then required to go to the forest as they originally agreed to for 12 years. And then 13th year was supposed to be incognito. This means they had to hide from Duryodhana's spies, and Arjuna dressed like a woman. He was a dancer. So they did their best to try to, not be seen, because they knew if they were discovered, then they would have to repeat the whole 12 years again in the forest. So one day after this final expiration date, so this means they played out their full 13-year exile, one of Duryodhana's spies found them. I'm not sure exactly who found them, but they were discovered one day after their full term has been complete. So they didn't really worry about that because they knew they completed their term. But Duryodhana didn't agree. He said, and was very persistent. He said, no, you were within the time limit. I found you, and you need to go back to the forest for the next 12 years. So this means that Duryodhana originally supposedly agreed to release the Indraprastha if they do the full term, but now he's making another excuse to not give them the kingdom. So he's saying, no, I'm not going to give you back your kingdom because you were late by one day. So nobody really agreed with this because all the elders knew that it was within the Vedic, the period of the time span. So nothing worked. And that is when Krishna decided to play the role of the negotiator. So he came in, just objective. He didn't bias any opinion. He didn't say you're a fool or you're an idiot or, how could you do this? He just came and he presented the facts. So this is a very important point because when it comes to negotiating anything in life, then the more we bring in our own stuff, the more resistance and less success it creates. Whereas if we're able just to suspend our own opinions about that person that we're currently, looking at, because see, you got to look at it this way. There's an emotional person also. So sometimes we also have a reaction, and that reaction, we try to negotiate with that reaction. And that in itself produces, it's impossible to get across because now they're agitated because you're agitated. So we need to suspend that at least temporarily so that we can negotiate and present the facts. So what was the fact that Krishna presented? He said, in order to end this conflict, you need to give back the kingdom that is rightfully deserved by your brothers. Then Duryodhana said, no, I'm not going to give you kingdom. And then Krishna says, fine, right? That's fine. I'm not going to, declare war yet. Let me give you some more options. Let me think for you. Since you cannot think for yourself, let through my own clarity present you some options that you can consider. And he says, then give them one district, which is a little bit smaller than the entire kingdom of Indraprastha. And then again, he said no. So then Krishna made it a little bit easier. He didn't again discard Duryodhana and says, you're a fool, you have no ethics. He says, okay, let me make this even easier for you. Let me give you another chance to think. One village. So then Duryodhana thinks about it. Well, one village is not that big. However, I still can't give that away. That's fine. So he makes it even easier now. Okay, then let's give them 5 houses. And then the answer is no again. And then he says, give them 1 house with 5 rooms. And then again, see, that's a very small offer, right? 1 house with 5 rooms. It's like a shared apartment. It's nothing in one entire kingdom. So this is a very simple deal to take up. However, Duryodhana still couldn't get himself to agree. And he said, if they want 1 inch of land, they're going to have to fight me for it. Now, this is a case of a difficult subject. Probably none of us will ever encounter someone as difficult as Duryodhana. However, it does present an opportunity for learning how Krishna is negotiating. So at this point, when negotiations failed, so no matter what Krishna did, no matter what clarity, because he's the Lord himself, so the Lord himself is negotiating with a human being who depends on the Lord, and the Lord failed, basically. So, and we'll talk about why this is. So at this point, the war was declared. Now, what Krishna is showing us is how to, if you just look at this scenario, we can just sort of pass this scenario and just keep on, into the story, or just look at it and analyze it and just ask, what does this mean? What are they trying to show us? So in this case, we're being shown how to negotiate, how to deal, how to put our opinion across and hopefully be heard by a difficult subject, by a subject that is either too immature to accept, who cannot see your point of view, who is intoxicated by some emotion or some kind of condition in life, even stress, right? That's called intoxication, or is just unwilling to comply because they're trying to save face, trying to not kind of stand down because it represents weakness or something, whatever, see, because there's so many complications that a human being carries. So we never know why exactly is someone not willing to at least consider your sincere help. So Krishna, he first of all says to Duryodhana, it was very direct. He says, you have been consistently unfair to your brothers. You have consistently violated dharma and ongoingly, just not being fair. In other words, Krishna was straight. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't say, well, let me philosophize. Let me tell you how you should be, how you should communicate. Let me kind of speak between the lines, expect you to now pick up the message. So this is the first message that we receive. When negotiating, how did Krishna start? He started with a pure objective fact. He said, here's why I am negotiating. Here's the problem. Here's the situation right now. You have violated dharma. It is incorrect to do so. And you have done it consistently and you still keep on doing it. So Krishna starts right from the top and then he goes down. It's called backwards thinking. So in other words, you make it very clear what is the matter, what is the subject matter, so that the both can capture that and then speak from that place. Because what happens is we often don't know what place we're speaking from. And then we get caught up in the responses of the others, justifications. And then we lose track. Why am I speaking in the first place? What was the original aim here? So this aim on the part of the negotiator has to be extremely clear before even attempting to negotiate. Otherwise, you yourself get sucked into the conversation and lose track of what is it that I'm trying to convey here. So secondly, Krishna did not immediately write off Duryodhana. Now, this is an important point because most of us, what happens is when we give good advice and it's sincere, you really want to help and you really mean it, you're coming from the best of your intentions. What happens is we give advice and if it's not followed, then what happens? We get either agitated, annoyed, resentful, disappointed, and then we just write the person off and we say, he or she will never change. And from there on, we make a firm conclusion not to ever try again. We literally write the person, or like putting a little signature and saying, I'm no longer in a certain level of relationship with this person. And I will never again attempt to reenact, to come back to that level of relationship, because at this level of relationship, they will never change. And this is common in families. Suppose there's someone who's not really capturing the essence and you're trying to present or convey a message, and they're just, maybe not ready to receive. And then we try, suppose 10 times. And then on the 11th time, we conclude, okay, that's it. They'll never change. My dad or mom or whoever it is will never change. I'm not even going to attempt to bring this up next time. So in other words, this is called passive aggressive, if you think about it. Why is it passive aggressive? On the part of, so if I'm doing it, I will be passive aggressive. Why am I passive aggressive? Because, why am I aggressive? Because I'm actually just putting them down silently. I'm actually, reducing their value in my own mind. They'll never change. They don't have the ability to make a difference in life. That's what I've made about them. So I've just painted an image of what this person is capable of and what they're not capable of. And why is it passive? Because I'm not expressing it outwardly. I'm keeping it inwards. So it's soft form of aggression, passive aggressive. And what else does this kind of passive aggressive behavior do to the person? It makes them agitated. So it's not like they can get away with it, because the advice giver ends up taking the load upon themselves, because now they're like, well, they're not listening to me and I feel annoyed by that. And, or even worse, the person takes it on personally. I'm not good enough. I cannot put the message across. So obviously I've got some errors in my own thinking. And if I was really wise, then they would hear me and they would accept my advice and they would say, thank you. And they will be so grateful. So obviously I'm not intelligent. So we either take it personally, or we go the other extreme and we just kind of write them off and say, nope, that's a incapable machine, right? They're no longer capable of making any changes. But if you look at your own life, how many times have you been advised of something and you didn't take that advice up immediately? Probably lots, right? But then you considered that advice, haven't you, much later, maybe 5 years later, maybe 1 year later, maybe 10 years later. Some messages that my mom and dad told me, like 30 plus years ago, are only being realized right now. So, and it takes a lot of courage not to get insulted or not to take it personally if someone doesn't receive what you're sincerely trying to convey. So it takes patience and it takes courage on the negotiator's part. Now think about Krishna. What did Krishna do? Totally opposite to what most of us do. So Krishna started step one, the big vision. Here's why I'm speaking to you, Duryodhana, just to make it clear. So then he attempted his best efforts. He gave a chance to Duryodhana. He didn't write him off once, not second, not third, not fourth, but when he exhausted all of the options, then he sets a boundary and he says, war is now declared. Because you haven't listened to me, here's the consequence. So he presented options. And if those options failed, as they did, he then set a boundary. In other words, all we as a negotiator can do, whether we're speaking for a family member, an associate, a friend, is you can present an option, but you need to be sincere about what you're trying to convey. It's not like you're trying to tell them, please change so you can satisfy me. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying being objective where it's got nothing to do with you. Now, from that moment on, you need to know where your line, where your boundary is. And this is what most of us don't know. We don't know where our line is. So what happens is we try to cross over our line even after we have done our best efforts. For example, Krishna sets the boundary and he did not think about this later on. He didn't go, oh, Duryodhana, how dare he disrespect the Lord of the universe? How dare he didn't listen to me? No, Krishna did all he could and he didn't even think about it the moment he left. Whereas some of us, what do? we keep it a load. We think about it and we go, could have I done this different? Let me now analyze the situation, which is fine. You should do that. There is a practicality there. However, we spend too much time thinking about it. So this means we need to know where our boundary is. And if you step outside that boundary, then that becomes your problem. So suppose I want to help Dave with something. And Dave sort of nods his head and goes, "Yep, okay, cool, good advice. Wow, this is fantastic." And then I just, it's kind of like recede. I back off. And then I see Dave repeating the same mistake. Now, if I don't know where my line is, what am I going to do? I'm going to cross that line and I'm going to get involved with the fact that Dave is not following my advice, or whoever it is. I'm not talking just about Dave, but whoever it is. Now, the moment you cross that line, it becomes whose problem? It becomes your own problem. So this is what Krishna is showing us. Once we present the options, you need to know, where does my line end? And do not cross that line, because if I do, then I make that my own problem. And therefore I suffer. And therefore my own clarity now cannot think in the future, for other people and so on. Now, what are some methods for dealing with difficult people? I would like to have you tell me, because I like to learn some methods. So let's have a little discussion. What are some effective methods for dealing or presenting or conveying a message to a difficult person? Unmute yourself and share.
Well, one of the techniques that I would use is to act like a mirror to some degree and try and rephrase the wording that's been put to you that you're thinking is unreasonable, put it back to the other person, but not trying to hit them over the head with it, but actually just giving it back to them in a way that's rephrasing it, but in a way that gives clarity, which might actually illuminate where the actual point is, that they're conflicting, something along those lines.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So what Martin is saying is there is this method. So suppose someone is, okay, have you ever been in a situation where someone's explaining something to you and it's clear they don't quite know how to put it. They don't quite know how to structure it together. And they're kind of struggling. So what Martin is saying now is, you don't say, "Oh, stop, stop. Let me tell you what you're trying to say." You just listen, and then you feed back those words and you put it in an order of what they were trying to say in the first place. So in other words, you put it all together through your own clarity, through your own understanding, and you just feed it back in some words whereby they can kind of reflect back on what they say, and then they can say, yeah, that's what I was saying. And then, so they can kind of think a little bit extra on the basis of what you have done for them, on the basis of what you have put together for them. So this is called the technique of reframing a conversation which didn't have any structure in the first place. So you're helping them to reframe that. Okay, okay, Robert?
Yeah, try to take the emotion out of the conversation, take the sting out of it, because people don't think well when they're emotional.
Okay, good. Yeah, okay, now this is also an art in itself, not to be like a dead, like a dead machine. No, thank you, and so on. So we do need emotion, because otherwise no one's going to relate to you, right? However, we need to ask, okay, let me not buy into my own emotion. Am I now getting caught up? And you know what it feels like to be caught up on your side, first of all. Usually there's a feeling in the chest, or some warmth in the heart, or the throat starts to tighten up, or the voice starts to get crackling. All of these things I'm sure you're aware of if you've taken some time to look at your own physiology. But also you can notice this on others. The moment the voice starts to get raised, then you can do the opposite. You can you can just play along. You can go, yeah, and then you can just like a dear friend. So you can keep that in control so that it doesn't go too extreme on one side or the other. And this way because it's an art, it's not just a matter of, keep your voice down. In fact, if you say keep your voice down, that hardly works, by the way. So it's an art. Yeah.
I think there's either you, in a conflict, either you win-win or win-lose. So one side will lose and one side have to win, either way. Or the best outcome is win-win, both sides win.
Okay.
That's one strategy.
Okay. Okay. It's all okay. So this is about what? So one side wins, one side loses. Now, what I did find in this regard that does work a little bit better is one has to understand that losing is not such a bad idea. Because if one just sort of blankly accepts, oh, I lost, and they don't understand that losing is actually not a big deal. It's not like I've lost my life. So this has to come across, right? Otherwise, if it's this black or white, like I won and you lost, then this may build into some subtle subconscious resistance or resentment. So they have to be clear that, hey, it's not a big deal, right? Someone has to get their way this time, next time you'll get your way. So this is how life is. It cannot be, sometimes it is this black or white, right? So that's also not it's also part of negotiation. Okay. Yes, Rani, yeah,
it's similar to the case what Krishna was doing. He was suggesting options for him, for Duryodhana. Instead of suggesting options for Duryodhana, why don't he ask Duryodhana to actually suggest options, what he would do? What would the suggestions be?
Okay, Rani.
That would have given Duryodhana the feeling of power, so he would actually feel better taking on that instead of listening to someone else's options.
Good.
And
Okay, Rani, brilliant point, brilliant. So Rani has a brilliant point, and I want to actually incorporate this point in a method that the police use, because I've studied how the police, for maybe 1 or 2 years, I've studied how the police force deal with difficult subjects on the road, because they're the least compliant, the most rebellious. So if you can figure out how the police actually handle these subjects, then you're on top. So I want to actually bring that in, which is going to incorporate what Rani just said of presenting options to the other. Good, Rani. Anything else? How to negotiate with a difficult subject who's not willing to comply?
I think what Martin has said earlier.
Yeah.
You have to reframe the person to that person what he actually has stated. That basically confirms what he has said. Otherwise, they might say no, and they might. So just to reconfirm that, then you set your boundaries. And I think initially Krishna had the softer approach, and then he has come to the last resort. So you set boundaries and firmly assert that if you don't, then this is what the consequence is going to be.
Good.
And so that's the way I think. I mean, even with people with aggressive or people in the police and all that, that's what usually the approach is.
Yeah, good. So Sundaram, so what Sundaram is saying is be active, proactive during the negotiation process. So this means there's no space for, there's something called, I think it's called a walling, like walling off the individual, just kind of saying, well, whatever, or silent treatment. So all of these methods are opposite to what Martin and Sundaram are saying, whereby I am active and I'm actually listening what is being conveyed here, and then I'm feeding back. And also, making it clear so that what I'm feeding back isn't necessarily what they may be saying, but it's actually, slightly making a few corrections, but in a very soft, gentle way. So there's not this strong, no, you're wrong. So this has to be avoided.
I think as well that being active can actually take the form of doing nothing for a moment and just listening and letting them actually get to the end, like run out, exhaust themselves of their argument, whatever that might be. Just let them run out of steam in their own devices rather than trying to answer their questions, which may be firing out in different directions as the same sentence is going along. You've got to let them run until they run out of steam,
yeah,
and have enough composure to then be able to go back and reframe and shorten up and be more succinct in what they've actually said to see if that's what they've actually meant.
Okay, now this is what Martin saying is brilliant because it ties in with what Robert said, both taking the emotion out, because if you let the person vent out, then that exhausts that emotion, that hot emotion, which reduces the intellect ability to think. And also doing nothing, there is a valid point here. I've taken a course some years ago on how to raise children. I was just interested in that topic. And one of the topics that I learned out of all of them is the process of venting. So children have a need to vent. And what is now venting? It is just it doesn't mean you need to be involved. It just means you need to listen as a parent and just let them speak, 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 speak. And now, as Martin said, until they exhaust themselves, until they get that emotion out, and then they're, a little bit more ready to receive. And so you can then apply the reframe method. You can, give them some advice how to look at it next time. So these are also wonderful methods. So pausing sometimes, letting the hot emotion exhaust itself, let them vent, and then when it's over, then apply some verbal advice.
Yeah, and I think the active part of doing nothing is actually you've got to be listening, because at the end of it, you've got to be able to reframe. And if you just shut off and do nothing, then at the end of it, you're going to wonder what's going on.
Absolutely, yeah, and so this is obviously also listening skills. And also you can while listening, you can also monitor your own state. Are you like boiling? Are you coming to the boiling point, or are you remaining cool? Are you still remaining calm? And I will talk about the importance of being calm as I move on now. Okay, so thank you for sharing. It was brilliant methods. Actually, anyone else would like to share one more method? One little tip?
We should talk about what's in it for them in the entire proposition instead of, saying what I want from them.
Excellent, Meena, excellent. Okay, so I want to tie in what Rani said with Duryodhana giving some power to them and also what's in it for them with the method that the cops apply. Okay. Anything else on your mind? One more before I go. Okay.
I mean, it all depends how you want to negotiate. I mean, if you want a win-win situation or you want to win-lose, basically, I mean, if you negotiate, you need to state your wants. Like in case of Duryodhana, he does not want to comply to what has been initially agreed. Whereas with the Arjuna, the Kauravas, the Pandavas, they have already agreed to what Duryodhana has said, and they have got a theme for negotiation. They are asking what they were promised. So basically, they know what they want, but Duryodhana does not know what he wants. All he wants is to get them out of the country or something. So I think usually in negotiation, you state your want and state their want, and then you see whether you want to meet halfway. That's one possibility in normal life, but I don't think this applies there.
So what Sundaram is saying is, see, this is exactly what's happening in the Mahabharata. It's not always a perfect world because you may know what you want and it may be even for their good, but they may not see that. So this is where we need to set the boundaries. Okay, so method one of the methods is give them options. So that's what Krishna has done. But you need to be clear what they are before giving these options. You need to think on the behalf of the individual, because obviously, if they were able to, exercise alternatives, they would have done it by now. So this means it's your job now to step in. The second is if those options don't work, then you set boundaries. Now, just to give you some relatable metaphor, this is exactly how the police force actually deal with subjects. So they first present options to a violator. So suppose you get pulled over, and and then the police will give you some options, like here's some things you can do. You can drive slower. You can go home and get out of the car. You can call someone else. You can call a taxi to take you home. Your alcohol level is too high. So they think on the behalf of this individual, because obviously the individual is intoxicated and they cannot think on their own behalf. Now, suppose it's a little bit more aggressive, like more violent. then the same principle applies. The options will first be clear and succinct. There's no violence on the behalf of the police that will be applied until the options presented are not working, and that's when the arrest will be made. I know one circumstance here in Melbourne where the woman was being checked up. Actually, cars were being, checkpoint for some verification. I don't know, I think it was a coronavirus test. And she was one of those conspiracy theorists. So she refused to open her door. And the police knocked and they said, present us your ID. And she said, no. And then, they negotiated. They said, you need to present us, just to keep you safe on the road. And she said, no. So after all of those options, what did they do? What did the cops do? They broke the window and they arrested her, right? So they first took their time to try to negotiate with the individual. Now, there's a brilliant book that I read some years ago, and it's called Verbal Judo. It's by George Thompson. Now, George Thompson was a cop who started out dealing with the most difficult subjects you can imagine, like the party goers, late night goers, testosterone driven males, fast cars, troublemakers. So he was constantly called, right, on his duty, and he's drinking his coffee, so he gets called up, and there's a fight going on, or there's a there's a crime, or someone's being punched, or someone's driving fast on the road. Now, these kinds of people are they're unbelievably hard to negotiate, especially when there's an authority figure that's trying to help them. So he discovered very quickly that violent arrests that just, because he was a martial arts judo expert, he discovered this doesn't work, because then later on the subject will, file a lawsuit against the police for some damages, maybe a broken bone or pain or something. So he thought, what do I do? What do I do about this? Because I really want to discover how to work with these people. So through the course of time, he tried some psychological techniques. And then he wrote, after many years, he wrote this book. But here's the basis of his message, what he wrote after he discovered how to deal with these subjects many years later. He said that most individuals are incapable of wording what they really mean. Most people are not capable of saying what we really mean. Why is that? He says because the words limit our experience. What we feel inside, sometimes we don't know the right words to call out to describe what we really mean. I mean, today I don't know about India, but I know in the West, this 4-letter word starting with F, it's become in some cases, the standard word for feeling good, feeling not so good, and feeling, the bad, the good, and the ugly. It's like, how you feeling? Effed. How you feeling? Effed. How was your night? It was effed, right? I don't understand this, but so this is one example how, not having the right vocabulary actually limits our experience. Just think about learning a new language. Suppose you're learning a new language like Sanskrit, and now you're going to speak, you want to express your feelings, and you can't. You know how frustrating that would be? Very frustrating. So that would limit our experience. So anyway, so he says, why is this? Why is there a gap between the words we say and what we really mean? What is that gap? What causes that gap? And he says the gap is caused by influence. Influence of what? Well, in the scenario of the cops, influence of alcohol, influence of drugs. But it doesn't stop there. Influence doesn't just mean that. Emotional influence, conditional influence, a memory, a bad, some unpleasant memory, that's also an influence. A frustration, that's also an impatience, waiting for the line in the post office. You're impatient. You're under the influence of impatience. Someone that said something to you that's hurtful, and it suddenly comes into memory. That's also, you're under the influence of an unpleasant memory. Now, when a person is under the influence, what happens? The space between what they say and what they really mean widens. Therefore, what do the cops have to do? They have to think on the behalf of the individual. In other words, he then says, the more calm the person is, the closer that space bridges. Did you ever notice what's the primary quality of policemen? Calmness. Not only is it to look professional, but it's a psychological reason, because the more on the influence I am, the less calm I am. The less calm I am, the less I have the ability to present to you what I really mean. And while I'm presenting what I really mean, discovering that I can't do it, what happens? I get more frustrated with myself and with you. So what do we need to do? Remain calm, number one. So practically speaking, suppose now it's someone's facing you, right? And you're in a hot conversation, a hot confrontation. Step one, take a deep breath, calm. Why? It's for your own good and for their good, because the calmer you are, the more you can think on behalf of yourself and the other. Now, he then says, he gave 5 methods to negotiate or deal with any difficult subject. And these methods start least effective to the most effective. So the first method is the simplest. And we've all done this before. Just tell them what they need to do. Just tell them. That's it. You don't need to give a reason. You just tell them. This is the simplest method. So suppose someone's now outside my house speaking loud, like a student speaking loud, and we're inside the house and we're having a discussion, and we can all hear the person. Now, do I have to go outside in person and tell him, can you please stop speaking loud and let me give you 5 reasons why? Do you have to do that? No. You just tell them, can you just please, go downstairs? He already knows, she already knows what you really mean. So you just need to give them a little nudge, because see, there's moments when we just forget what is a civilized way to conduct ourselves. We temporarily forget. So we just kind of like give a little nudge. Don't hit your sister. Don't steal the ice cream. Don't use swear words. The individual already knows why. However, sometimes this doesn't work. In fact, this mostly works with educated people, because those who cannot see a reason why, they're not going to listen to this first method. They're not going to say, why should I, right? Like, I don't understand. Why should I? What's wrong with speaking loudly on the phone? I'm a free individual. I'm a free human being. So they're unable to see. So this first method is least effective, but it does work on educated individuals or for younglings, because they trust their mom and dad. Okay, now the second method is this is more effective. You give them a reason why. Now this is what Mina was saying. Make sure that reason is in their good, in their highest and greatest good. It is in their interest. Why? For example, if I was a cop and I pulled you out, if I stopped your car, the first method would be to say, give me your license. I don't even give you a reason why. Now, most will comply by this point. But suppose I don't. What does a cop do then? Second method. Give me your license. Now, not so that because, I'm going to arrest you or something, but give me your license because I really want to make sure that, you wake up, you're safe on the road and nobody gets hurt here, that you get home safely, you're happy, you can go to your nice, comfortable, warm bed, cover yourself with those lovely sheets, wake up tomorrow, in your lovely, orange juice or tea or coffee, whatever you have. I don't know who has orange juice in the morning, but whatever you want to do, and, you'll be safe on the road. So by this point, the person's like, okay, so this is definitely my interest. I definitely want to give him my license. Now think about a little bit more, down to earth. How would you apply this in a difficult situation? Suppose someone's not listening to you and you really want to just, help them out. So you do number 1, tell them what to do. Doesn't work. Method 2. Okay, please stop or please do so that, and then whatever that is, it is in their interest. That means it's going to help them. That means if they thought about it, like you thinking about it, they would have definitely, they would have said yes anyway. So you're thinking on their behalf. Now, George says at this point, 80% will comply. right? So you don't have to worry in most cases, because most in real life will comply by the second method. If you just give them a strong enough reason. Now, what if the reason fails? Then you need to think a better reason. You need to clarify the reason, how it's in their good, how it's in their interest to follow through. For example, follow through so that that you're happy, that you don't resent this later on, so that you stop eating the excess ice cream, so that you don't feel tired later on and hyperactive, and so that you can learn and study, and which is what I know you like anyway. Or stop meditating for so long, because you can do some work and you can actually sharpen your mind in a much more effective way by doing some different hobbies on the side, or whatever it is. I'm sure you get the example. Now, what if this method fails? He then says, third method, give 2 options. Now, by now, 90+% will comply. 9 out of 10 people, if you give 2 options. The first option is completely not in their favor. The second option is totally in their favor. But both options imply a consequence. Now, the second method you're not threatening with a consequence. The third option, you're implying a consequence. For example, suppose I'm a cop and I stop you. I will say, okay, fine, you don't want to give me your license. I've explained my reasons why you should give me a license, to keep you safe on the road. And I see you don't want to be safe on the road. I see you obviously don't want to arrive home and wake up tomorrow in a nice, comfortable bed. That's fine. So you got 2 options. Either you cannot give me a license, and when you wake up tomorrow, you will wake up in a very cold, dark, place called the cell. It's going to be hard, by the way. The food is going to be unpleasant. Your parents are going to find out. Your boss is going to find out. He's not going to be happy. You're going to have a criminal record. So this means you're going to have some problems getting through, maybe customs when you're traveling overseas. You're going to have a big charge in your bank account. And no matter what you do, you're just going to, regret it, no matter how you look at it. Or you can give me your license and I can just check it. I can go to the car, check, make sure your details are up to date, that there's no problems, that I can, maybe help you out with some outdated details. Then you will go home happily. You will sit down and you will watch some TV. You'll be so glad to be sitting down with your heater next to you, and maybe even call your friend, or maybe even kiss your girlfriend or boyfriend. And you'll be so glad just to be there with them, just experiencing that hug, feeling warm. Which one do you want? Now, who's going to choose option A? Think about it. Hardly few. Nobody's going to choose. So this is going to this implies a consequence. So now they're going to choose option B. So in other words, I'm going to give you my license. Now, method 4 is what Rani said. What if everything else failed? Then you apply method 4. You give them the power. Now, the reason the cops do this is so that they're not sued later on, because now they can say, well, I actually gave them the power. I told them they have the option to do what they want, and they didn't comply. So the method 4 is, the cop says, is there anything else that I can say or do that will get you to work with me? Is there anything else that I can say right now or do that will get that will get us to work together, so we can mutually agree to some resolution? Is there anything that I can do? You tell me. I give you now the power. I give you the choice. And you just wait. So now all of the power is in their hands. If that fails, what do? Method 5, set the boundary. That's when they make an arrest. So this method has now been distributed throughout, probably in most of the police force throughout USA. This very method that I described is being used by the law enforcement to deal with difficult subjects. And it's highly effective because it gives the reason, it gives you the power to make your choice, and it gives you options. Consequences, reason, and giving you the power, they're all effective methods to deal with difficult subjects. Okay. Now,
way. I think in the USA, most of the people shoot first and then talk afterwards.
Say again, Dave?
They shoot first and then talk afterwards. In the US.
They should
In
do.
the US, the cops, they shoot first.
They have a bad
talk
reputation.
afterwards.
I don't quite get that, but
Oh, okay. What he's saying is in USA, in
Yeah.
America,
Yeah.
they shoot first, then they talk.
shoot and then talk. No, where does this happen?
Recently, it's been happening.
Yeah, but there's always some impatient fellas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Now I want to talk about the next question is, why couldn't Lord Krishna himself convince Duryodhana to make the right choice? Never mind a human being. The Lord himself couldn't convince Duryodhana because the Lord has the highest intentions. The Lord knows how every action you apply is going to have a consequence. All knowing, all knowledge couldn't get across to a single individual. Why do you think this is?
I think Duryodhana wanted a war. Whatever the outcome, he wanted a war, I think.
Okay, now what does that imply if he wanted a war?
So he wouldn't listen to any option. He'll just go ahead and that's it. Because he knew he had a bigger army. He was much stronger and, he wanted to get them out of the country or whatever. So he wasn't listening to anything.
Okay, good. So, what I want to bring that, so what does that imply? It implies, as Kritika is saying here, free will. Okay, so everyone is given free will. No one's an exception from this. But with free will comes also dharma. If you only came with free will without dharma, it will be chaos. You wouldn't know what is right or wrong. So that principle of righteousness is what we call dharma. The fact that I know that I don't want to hurt myself, the fact that I want to survive one more day, the fact that I don't want to jump off a building knowing that I could easily do so. What makes us protect ourselves? What makes us not want to hurt ourselves? That is what we call dharma on a physical level. But also what makes us want to have a successful life? That is also dharma on a more subtle level. What makes us not want to kill another individual? That is also dharma on a much deeper mental level. So dharma, if you have some problems understanding this word dharma, just think of it as what is fair. If I put alcohol in my body, is that fair to the kidneys? No, because now the kidneys are working overtime to clean out the blood, to separate the alcohol from the blood, and to purify that. So at the physical level that we call adharma, that means it is unfair, it's unjust to the body on a physical level. If I expose my mind to constant swearing and constant violence and movies, which are just, constant action and all of these sexual scenes and, all this stuff that produces unnecessary desire, is that fair on a mind? No. Now, how do you know it's not fair? That's a bigger question.
Because it continues to stimulate your mind in further directions of similar negative ideas.
Yeah, and how does that
inaction?
Yeah, and how does that feel? Does that feel? Is that something that you want, or is that something you want to be free of? Yeah. Yeah, think about when a mosquito bites you. What do you want to do? Do you want to why do we scratch a mosquito bite?
Itchy.
Yeah, but why else? Why do you scratch it?
Comfort.
Comfort. Okay, so what does that imply when you say comfort?
On the misconceived idea that the pain will go away or the suffering will go away.
Yeah, and it does, doesn't it? Temporarily. So I scratch myself in order to get rid of what I inherently know does not belong to me. In other words, I keep stimulating, I keep exercising this desire, hoping just to get rid of it. Just like with a mosquito bite. Okay, same thing with the physical, with the desire level. Why do we keep exercising desire day after day? Is it for the sake of desire, or is it for the sake of you being free, at least temporarily, from that desire? Freeing yourself from that desire. It is an ineffective method, but it does work, right? So this is why some can go into this mode of, having just excess, intimacy that is just for the sake of, removing that sense, that urge, that itch for connecting physically. So then they have too much sex or something. So this is another just example at that level of removing that desire, which I want to be free of. Now, so we're giving free will, and if that free will is used to violate dharma, what happens? There are consequences. There are always consequences. Now, these consequences is what we call Ishvara's intelligent laws in which these interactions are taking place. What interactions is the next question. Well, suppose that I have there's two wires, there's a plus and minus, and I touch the plus and it's 5,000 volts. What's going to happen? Yeah, zzz, electricity, right? My heart's going to stop probably. So what have I done? I've crossed the limits of what is allowed, of what is possible. So electricity is there. It doesn't go around, killing people. But what made electricity kill me? I did. How did I make electricity kill me? By violating, disrespecting the presence of that law called electromagnetism. Despite knowing it there, that's not good enough. I still need to work with it in order to move forward, to move through life. In the same thing with, suppose, communicating with people. I know that I can't communicate, but that's not good enough. I need to communicate pleasantly. Otherwise, no one's going to listen to me. And if no one listens to me, how are you going to move? How are you going to have a successful life? So whichever way you look, there are laws. And if certain limits are crossed, then who suffers? We suffer. It's not like those laws as set forth by this grand intelligence called Ishvara. It's not like they're meant there to punish us. It's our actions through our free will that makes those laws punish us. So therefore, there's no question of pointing fingers and saying that's God's fault. That is just incorrect thinking. Okay, so that's clear. Now, this is also the difference between a quick fix advice and the difference between a teaching. A quick fix advice is basically just a sense of here's what you should and shouldn't do. Now, this works temporarily, but why doesn't it stick? It doesn't stick because we haven't understood the depth of what it means for me. You've told me something that I'm supposed to do, but I haven't understood what's the meaning, what's the benefit, what, as Mina was saying, what's in it for me to continue sustaining this and adhering to this law. Whereas a teaching is the very principle which tells us the meaning behind following the laws, behind staying within certain boundaries. So the difference between quick fix and a teaching is revealing what is, whereas an advice doesn't reveal what is. It just says, here's how to put a temporary band-aid. Now, what do I mean by what is? What is just means something which is apparent and yet I missed it. Now, why have I missed that which is apparent? I've missed it because I haven't been inquiring into reality itself. Suppose that you're speaking unpleasantly and people just don't listen to you. And you're like, why is nobody listening to me? And then you discover, oh, nobody's listening to me because I don't listen to them, right? I'm like always talking over them. So this means a teaching reveals why you're receiving these responses versus advice just says, listen to people. But you're like, oh, okay, I'm listening to people. Anyway, and then you continue, with your old habits. So that's the big difference. Now, also, why, okay, so the original question was, why couldn't Lord convince Duryodhana? The second reason is because if change is to occur, both parties need to mutually agree. Someone said this on the discussion, so if one party is agreeing, whereas the other does not, then from that moment on, you no longer have any control. Right? So the only control that we have as an individual, as a negotiator, is what we present to them, what options we offer them. But once we finish, our control is finished. It's over. Now it is up to them, through their own free will, to discover how it is beneficial to them. Now, a bigger question is, what makes an individual not follow advice? Yes?
It's his own narratives.
It's
his own narratives.
Yeah, it's his, okay, good, yeah. So, okay, so what does narrative imply? Value. So whatever narratives we have in our minds are on the basis of values that we hold about what things mean. If I have a value for money, then what kind of narrative goes on in my mind? Money, how to survive, how to make more money, how to spend money, how to invest money, friends, you go with friends, the first thing's money. If your value is for, okay, stick with money. Now, if I have a value for money, then what's gonna happen? It can also override value for decency. So this means now I start making money how? By cheating, by lying, by finding some shortcuts, by, from these, in malicious ways. Why? Because my value for money supersedes my value for ahimsa, my value for not hurting, not lying, not cheating. In other words, I haven't understood how not lying, not cheating is actually good for me. I haven't taken the time to see how that is so. Because that is the case, I'm able to cheat. In other words, as long as I don't know what's in it for me for following the value of not lying and being honest and being decent, as long as I haven't done that, then I will lie and I will cheat and I will take shortcuts, I'll be abusive and so on. So in Duryodhana's case, he could not see how the value of being just, of sharing, is actually in his own good versus his own personal value for power, his own personal value for being known and loved by the people, right? So this is something that Duryodhana hasn't taken time to look into. For that reason, no matter what Krishna said, those values were simply not captured by Duryodhana. He heard it, but he couldn't assimilate it. Okay. And this also brings another point, which is a lot of us have this idea, I don't know who, but there's this idea that Ishvara is like this, some big person that's supposed to fix everyone. Either me or it's supposed to fix my family. Someone that's, that's close to me. Now, again, this is an incorrect way of thinking of Ishvara. Again, Ishvara is just a value-neutral presence, a value-neutral intelligence in which all of the interactions take place. The individuals within who are part of those interactions, if they violate certain laws, then they suffer. Those individuals who stay within the boundaries of those laws, there's no question of suffering. Then life is smooth. For example, if you take, your car, petrol, you just put petrol in your car. Now, if I put petrol in my car and I drive recklessly and irresponsibly, then at the court, once I have an accident, am I going to now tell the judge, don't blame me, it's not my fault, it's the fault of the petrol? Are you going to do that? No. What's the judge going to do? They're going to, give you a big, massive demerit. Whereas if I drive that same car with that same petrol to arrive to some place for the benefit of myself and another, then that petrol, that very same petrol has taken me from A to B and I've had a successful result. Versus that very same petrol has supposedly made me, crash my car. But it's not the petrol, it's me. The petrol was just there, a value neutral resource that was allowing me to drive the car either recklessly or drive the car responsibly. And the result of that driving is my own responsibility. It's not the petrol. The petrol is just there. Okay, so getting back to this idea that Ishwara is not supposed to be some daddy who, fixes people and influences people, and let me pray so that, my daughter-in-law or my mother-in-law, whoever it is, so that they may change. It doesn't work like that. These are all fantasies that we set up, and we hope that Ishwara is now sending like little lightning bolts and changing their neurology or their thought. It doesn't work like that. So it's up to them to see the value in that change, but that you don't have any control over. So this means, again, we need to set that boundary. Otherwise we get too involved and invested trying to change other people. But in reality, they will only change when they see the value in the change for themselves. Until then, you have no control whatsoever. Also, this also means that there is we cannot artificially speed something up. For example, the seasons, right? Summer only comes after spring. So it's not like I can speed up summer. No matter how much I pray, I can pray all I want. Please, summer, come, come, come. But that's not going to happen. So in other words, everyone has to go through a stage before they arrive to this richer, fuller, deeper understanding. So this means you need to be patient because seasons are not forced. There's a nature, there's a law to seasons, and that law cannot be violated. I have to work with that law. For example, I can't just put shorts in and no clothes while it's winter, while it's snowing outside. Who's going to suffer? I will. Why? Because I am going against the laws as set up, as presented, that are taking place in this vast intelligence called Ishvara. So we can see that no matter how much we resist, it is us who suffers. Because the laws are presented and it's up to me to follow those laws. So that's what it means to live life that is in harmony with nature versus constantly resisting life and hitting roadblocks. So this also means, lastly, before moving on, is that we cannot box people up into good or bad. This is another common mistake. So here's a little test. Suppose someone's not paying attention to you, or they're doing something that's just not disciplined. That's quite rude, or something that is in the nature of unacceptable. And we call them, sometimes we say, oh, what a XYZ. We define them. Now, what happens if they make a decision, a massive shift or a massive transformation the next day? Are they still bad, in quotes? Can you still call them that? No. Well, why did you call them bad yesterday? And why are you calling them good now when there's a potential for a bad tomorrow? And why are you going to call them bad tomorrow when there's a potential for good after tomorrow? In other words, this is nothing to do with defining people into boxes, but rather seeing what is. There's a huge difference between seeing what is versus having this need, this urge to define the person or the situation with a full stop. And then when it changes, as it will, because nothing stays the same, then we carry this conclusion from yesterday onto today. Whereas the world, the person has moved on. And then what happens? Then we say, hey, so what happens? Then we actually limit the person. Our whole attitude changes in accordance to what we believe to their incapacity. Well, you're not capable. You don't have the capacity to change. So this is how I look at you. And they feel this. So they don't feel comfortable around you. Why? Because you're not allowing them to change. You're not allowing them to flower, to blossom. So this means we need to be careful not to box people up. And if we do, this is felt by the person. People are like radars. There's that underlying feeling. They pick this up. And sometimes, children can't move on because of their parents. When they're in the presence of their parents, they feel like, well, they're still looking at me like a little kid. And then what does the child do? What does the son or daughter do? They hold themselves back. They don't express themselves to the parents. So they don't share their advice. They don't give their full view of what they're going through. They don't give their opinion because they're thinking, well, what's the point? They're seeing me like a little child, and that's just who I am. And then guess what? The parents treat you exactly like that, how you see yourself. All right. Now, moving on. So after the war was declared, Duryodhana and Arjuna now both go to Lord Krishna's royal court to ask for his help. So while Krishna in his court was sleeping, Duryodhana sits near his head, and Arjuna sits near his feet. And since Arjuna was at his feet and Krishna just happened to be looking while he was sleeping towards his feet, he opened his eyes and he saw Arjuna first. So they both presented their reason for showing up. They said, we need your help. We need your help, Lord. And then Lord Krishna says, well, since I saw Arjuna first, I'm going to ask him, what do you want? Do you want my army, which is going to consist of many horses and many elephants? Or do you want me? And if you choose me, I will be unarmed. I won't fight. I will only be your guide. I will only serve as your intelligence, as your charioteer. And what does Arjuna do? Without any hesitation, he says, Krishna, I don't need your army, no matter how powerful it is, because I'm already confident in my skills. I know myself to be a great warrior. I need you. I need your guidance. I need your direction. Now, why did Arjuna say this? Because he knows that there is more to success and failure than his skills, than his intelligence. He knows there is something much larger that is required for us to succeed in life, and that is called Lord's grace. Because Arjuna has this vision, understands it, for that reason he chooses Krishna. Whereas Duryodhana, he was like, this is awesome. I couldn't be happier. This means Duryodhana is now getting the army. He's getting all of the, because Duryodhana is like, who needs Lord's grace? What is this mumbo jumbo, Lord's grace? So Duryodhana couldn't understand the meaning of Lord's grace. He thought all of the success is in the army. All of the success is in the physical. All of the success is in the strategy, but it doesn't work like that. There's a much larger intelligence that is necessary in order to move through life in a successful way. In fact, Duryodhana thought he was an emotional fool. What a little sissy. He's, softening up in front of Krishna, and he's sharing his vulnerabilities, and he's feeling emotional. What an emotional fool. Which I will ask you a question what this means, because this is a lot of symbolism here, especially when he calls him an emotional fool. So the question is, what is the symbolism? Let's put it this way. So both Arjuna and Duryodhana go to the royal court to Lord himself. Why didn't the Lord reject Duryodhana? Because Duryodhana is clearly violating the rules. Why didn't Lord say, go away, I'm not going to give you anything. I support Arjuna only. What do you think is the symbolism behind this?
Lord is neutral.
You are the total.
Lord is neutral.
Yeah, Lord is neutral. Good. Okay, we can go with that. So Lord is neutral. In other words, both Duryodhana and Arjuna, they're not away from the absolute. They're not away from the total. So there's no rejecting. There's no question of putting someone out. Where are you going to go? If there's only one total intelligence, how can intelligence take itself out? Where are you going to go if there's only one? The other principle is, okay, so Duryodhana was following the path of adharma willingly, and Arjuna was following the path of dharma. Now, what's the symbolism? Despite following different paths, ultimately, who do you call for? The Lord. What does this mean? Ultimately, you resort to the Lord, even if you are a sinner or a saint. I guess the answer is in the question itself. Did you put your hand up, Mauktik? No.
What I think, everything comprises of the one total intelligence, and that's the Lord Himself.
Yeah.
So if it's adharma or if it's dharma, they both reach the same point. The only difference is adharma is going against the will of the Lord or the total intelligence, and dharma is going with the will of the Lord or the total intelligence.
Yeah, good. And also what Kritika just said through chat is we're all seeking, everyone's seeking the same thing. Now, what is this thing that everyone's seeking? Why did they go to Krishna? Did they just go to Krishna for whose sake did they go to Krishna for? For their sake. They're both looking for success. They're both looking for at least the version of success that they believe is necessary to be happy. So no matter what we want, we're only doing it because we're trying to be happy. At least what we think is going to give us happiness. Never mind the method, but the underlying reason behind all of those actions is because I'm seeking to be fulfilled. I just want to be happy with life, to be fulfilled. Okay, the next question is, what is the symbolism of the Duryodhana sitting near his head and Arjuna sitting near his feet?
Humility, sign of humility.
Sign of
with the Arjuna sitting at his feet.
Yeah. Okay. Kritika said arrogance versus humility. Okay. I want you to say a little bit more about this, because this arrogance and humility. Just to kind of expand a little bit more.
Humility, well, you're actually surrendering to the Lord. You are saying, you're being humble about it without any ego.
Okay, and arrogance?
Arrogance, you feel like you're the power of control.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Arrogance versus humility. Duryodhana sitting near his head, Arjuna near his feet. It's all right, right? Yes?
The feet symbolize understanding.
Understanding and?
Yeah. And understanding, humility, and surrender for the feet.
Yeah. Okay, good. So Robert is saying is, and understanding, of course, what precedes understanding? Humility. In order to want to understand in the first place, I must have come from a background of humility, because humility leads me into the course of educating myself, and education leads to an understanding. So to be near someone's head, it just means like I am at your level, right? I am as though all knowledge, all power. So what Rani is saying, she also said this lovely, is what Duryodhana, he doesn't see what Krishna is, who Krishna really is. So it's like, let me deal at your level. Like, let me like, I'm the boss. Let me negotiate with you straight. But he doesn't realize he's actually negotiating with the Lord. Whereas Arjuna, he sits near his feet, which is always a sign of respect, which is a sign of, I need help. I'm sharing my, I'm not in a position to know really what the strategy is and how I should go about this. So I'm seeking your help. So this is what's called a sign of humility. I'm not as intelligent as I'd like to be. Whereas the Duryodhana, I know it all. I want to speak straight to you. So there's no that sense of, this acknowledgement, like, I come humbly for asking for your help. No. It's just like, hey, help me. Okay. Now, question 3 is, why do you think Duryodhana caused Arjuna an emotional fall? What an emotional fool who's sharing his vulnerabilities. Okay, how about in high school? Remember those times when someone's, kind of feeling low, and then what the rest of us do? Oh, what a little sissy, what an emotional fool. Oh, what a weakling. They're crying. Oh, look, he's crying. Oh, look, she's crying. What is all this stuff that we, call others fools when they're showing their genuine weakness, when they're showing their genuine vulnerabilities? Where is this coming from?
Well, it's like a false toughness, pretending to be strong. So I guess it's bullying, but yeah, pretending a false toughness.
Yeah, false toughness. Yeah, that's a good point, Adrian. So this false toughness is this mask that I'm putting on, and this mask is like, I am invincible here. I'm not affected by the world, but in reality, everyone is affected, and there's no denying about it. So to preserve face, to kind of sustain that image of who I think I am, then what do? We put this false image in front of society, and we kind of like play along as though we're equal. I go to a top musician and I just pretend like, yeah, I know music, I know art, I know, whatever it is, I know rocket science, I'm at your level. But in reality, you're not, and you clearly know you're not. So this is what Duryodhana is doing. He's approaching Krishna as though he's at equal level, what he clearly knows he's not. So he's putting on this toughness, and this toughness, in order to save face, what does it do? It lives in denial. So wherever there's a denial in a person, that means they're not willing to confront those issues within themselves that are agitating, that are haunting them at night, keeping them awake and thinking about it. That transforms into a form of projection into the world. So that's where blaming comes, or a sense of, I'm tough, I'm not affected by this. So when this toughness sees this emotional vulnerable person, it interprets it as weak. But it's actually the most courageous thing that a human being can do, is to share their weaknesses, to share their vulnerabilities. Because anyone can put up a mask, it's easy. But who can actually openly, admit, hey, like I've got problems and I'm trying, but I'm not getting anywhere. To actually put oneself in front and not feel like they're being judged. That takes so much. That is a sophisticated mind right there. And that's where Arjuna is coming from. Okay, now I want to share, lastly, the mindset. So Dhritarashtra now, so it's a war situation. Pandavas are on one side and Kauravas on the other side. Okay, we got 10 minutes, good. And Dhritarashtra is also seeing what's happening through Sanjaya, because Sanjaya has been given the vision through Vyasa, so Sanjaya can see what's going on in the battlefield at Kurukshetra. And Sanjaya is now reporting everything to Dhritarashtra, because they're both in their kingdom in Hastinapur, but the war is Kurukshetra. So it's kind of like this remote vision. So the Dhritarashtra's first words are significant. So, in the Gita chapter 1, it starts with Dhritarashtra uvacha dharma kshetre kurukshetre. Now, just look at this, dharma kshetre kurukshetre. This is what Dhritarashtra says, the first words in chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita. So now we're entering the Bhagavad Gita, by the way. Now, what does this mean? So Dhritarashtra qualifies Kurukshetra, which means the venue of battle, the venue of life. It doesn't mean just battle as in physical, but the venue of life, the venue of challenges, whereby challenges take place. he qualifies this venue as dharma, as a dispute between dharma and adharma. So he's already in touch with the fact that this war is between righteousness and unrighteousness, between dharma and adharma. And he also knows that himself and his relatives are on the adharma side, but he's unable to do anything about it. He's unable to stop himself, because any moment he can just say, stop the war, any moment, because he's the king, but he can't do that. Why? Because he's caught up for his love for his son. So his love for his son to be happy overrides that value, overrides the value for what? The value for dharma, the value for reason and what is just and what is right. So again, it is a conflict of values problem. Now, what is the mindset of Duryodhana and Arjuna? Let's look at that. So now we know the mindset of Dhritarashtra. He is in a state of conflict, and he knows so far this is the war between dharma and adharma. What about Duryodhana? Duryodhana describes his army. So Duryodhana is now, in front of the first line. He looks back, and the first thing he says when he sees all of these men is, all of these men have surrendered their lives for me. That's the first thing he says. All of these men are about to give up their life for me. Think about this. The first thing you say, you look back, all of these men have given up their life for me. What do you think this means? If you look underneath these words. Okay, put yourself in the battlefield. First thing you say, all these men have given up their life for me.
Is he already sort of accepting that he is going to lose?
Okay. Yeah, good.
The tense that he's using is that they have given up their lives for me. He's not using that they might be, giving up, he's not talking in the future tense. Yeah. He's already talking in terms of he's assumed that they have given up, they're already dead. So that can only happen if he has lost the war.
Yeah, okay, very good. See, the critic is thinking behind the lines, few lines behind. So, okay, did Jyoti wanted to say something, or anyone else?
Could it be an expression of guilt?
Good. Okay, good. There's an expression of some inner conflict. Jivita?
Yes, he quantifies his achievement by the number of people behind him. He has the strongest army and the biggest army. So he's already quantifying it and then thinking he's already winning the war.
Yeah, kind of like false, some confirmation for himself to build his confidence, maybe.
I think he's got the fear. He's got the fear, underlying fear, and therefore he's describing and quantifying the warriors and the skills of the warriors and so forth. But there is an underlying fear that he will lose, or he may lose the war.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Robert?
But it's also saying that they've given him their full support and their full love for him.
Yeah.
And he's responsible for that.
Okay, but he doesn't really know. He doesn't even know that that's true, because those men are actually forced to be there. It's not like they willingly want to be on it. Everyone knows basically what's right or wrong. They all want to be on the Pandava side if they could, but they just found themselves in the Kauravas position. Mauktik?
He thinks that all the people have surrendered their life to Duryodhana, like almighty, all-powerful Duryodhana has become.
Yeah, in a sense, like I'm the Lord and everyone's surrendering from me. So, okay, good. So Mauktik's now getting to what I was going to say. Robert?
Oh, that was my point. He's putting his ego in the place of the Lord. Yeah. He's putting his own ego in the Lord's place.
Okay, good. Okay, so So to say this, it first of all indicates some presence of conflict, because just put yourself in a situation. If your focus is really on Dharma, would you even say that? Would you even say, because to say all of the men have surrendered for me, or you're making a whole war about whom? Yourself.
Yes,
It's got nothing to do with the actual principle. And the principle is, it is a Dharma, is protecting Dharma. So to make this kind of statement indicates that I already know what is right or wrong here. In fact, Duryodhana himself admits later on, he says, I know what is right, but I cannot get myself to follow through. I also know what is wrong, but I cannot get myself to withdraw from it. Right? So this is indicating a presence of this inner battle that Duryodhana is going through. Now, what about Arjuna's perspective? First of all, it's totally different, Arjuna's perspective. What's the first thing that Arjuna do? He told Krishna, Lord Krishna, hey Lord, take me to the middle, whereby I can see from a clear standpoint the total situation, the whole situation. Thomas, did you want to say something? Okay. So what is now Arjuna doing? He is using his viveka. Viveka just means discrimination, my intellect. I want to see before I'm thinking twice before I act. I want to make sure that everything is in the right place, that there is something more that I can learn about this before I act, because usually we act before we even know the totality of the situation. So then, we suffer because of that. So Arjuna is now, looking at what is going on and in a strategic place. So unlike Duryodhana, what does Arjuna see? He sees his own people on both sides. Whereas Duryodhana just sees it's them against us. In fact, it's a very sharp contrast with Duryodhana. These men have given up their lives for me, so we're definitely now going to, we're up against them. But no, Arjuna sees, hey, there are families on those sides, there are wives and children on those sides who are going to be without a husband. And those wives will now mourn. And the children will be without a protection, a protective father. And they will grow up because of that scarred. And that scarring, that distortion is going to then carry on into generations further on. And that is now going to cause a degradation in the society. You see how Arjuna is already thinking so many steps ahead? Whereas for Duryodhana, it's just this against that. Now, when Arjuna comes to this place of recognizing the overwhelming repercussions of what is about to happen, he totally breaks down. He's overcome by the totality of the situation. And this is a crucial moment whereby his entire view changes from situational questions to fundamental questions. This is where the Gita is now about to begin. Now, before I get there, what Arjuna is going through is that one crucial moment in life that you can call the difference between a little boy and a man, a little girl and a woman, a little boy who thinks they're maturing like a man, but they're just going through stages. It's just a metamorphosis. And there is that one reality that hits us that is so hard that you finally see reality in a totally different, it just hits you. And it's like, wow, it's like almost like something flourishes, something comes out. Same thing for a woman. It's just, going through life and it's something so hard, so impactful, such a strong influence hits you that your entire shift of life changes in one split second, literally in 1 second. And from there on, the type of questions that you ask also start to change. And what kind of questions did it change for Arjuna? For Arjuna, it was questions about situations. How do I resolve this? How do I communicate better? Where do I go to be, to make more money? And how can we negotiate? And how can we be a better person? All of these are situational questions. They deal with life itself. Why do we call them situational? Because they are pertinent to the situation itself. As soon as you get out of that situation, that situation is no longer valid. That question is no longer valid. I want to learn music. Music is only valid where? As long as you're sitting in front of a guitar or a piano. I want to learn computer programming. That's only valid as long as you're sitting in front of a computer screen. The moment you get up and you go and take care of your mom or dad or someone that needs sincere help, those situations are no longer true. Now you need to take care of that situation. So most of our lives go into these situational questions. How do I get this? How do I get this done? How do I be a confident person, a humorous person, a person everyone likes, a good husband, a good wife, a good mom, a good dad? How do I learn Sanskrit and know all these languages? And how do I remember? Right? So it's constant things about situations. But what happens now? Arjuna sees that no matter how this works out, there is no winning or losing. Because if I win, I haven't won. What happened? I killed so many men, sincere men, who didn't deserve to be there, but they found themselves there. If I lose, nobody really won, because still someone's going to have a loss. Someone's going to not have their family anymore, and that's going to have repercussions on the society. So Arjuna starts to ask different kind of questions, and those are called the fundamental questions of life. That's the moment when that shift happens from a child to a man, from a girl to a woman. And what are those questions? What is the meaning of life? What is the ultimate goal of life? What is the purpose of life? How did this universe come about? What and who created this universe? Why did this universe come about? What is my role in this universe? What difference am I making? Am I making any difference? Where did all this come about? How did we all come to this world? Why are we here? Where are we going? So these are all fundamental questions that lead to this, to a different mindset, to a different thinking. How do I have lasting, unbroken fulfillment? This question is now in Arjuna's mind. So he sees there is no solution. 5 more minutes. There's no solution to winning here, because there is no such thing as winning. If I kill them, then I have to take that guilt. How can I be happy, therefore, if I win this war? If I lose, still, someone's going to have a loss. And this is what makes him completely surrender to Lord Krishna. And he says, thus, Krishna, I now see the overwhelming reality of this situation that I have not seen before until now, because I've been hit by the reality. I am your student, teach me. Teach me how to move through life, and teach me these fundamental questions which I want to know. Now, question before we close. How did Arjuna and Duryodhana deal with their inner conflict? Okay, instead of asking you, I'm just, because it's a quick question. How did they deal with inner conflict? What did Duryodhana do? Because both of them had inner conflicts. Pandavas had the constant pain of being attacked by the Kauravas through pranks and through so many attempts to assassinate them. So they never got a break. The Kauravas never got a break because they were so jealous. They were constantly exercising their control for power. But how do they deal with their inner conflicts? Duryodhana dealt with denial. So he kept suppressing it. How so? What happened then? Because I'm suppressing it, I end up putting it outside, because it has to be released somehow. So whenever there's a projection onto someone, to the Pandavas, to the society, it's the government. What does that mean? There is denial inside here. What kind of denial? That means I'm not accepting something about myself. And in order to alleviate that pain, what do? I temporarily relieve myself by projecting onto the society. So I have this strong black or white. It's them. Just instantly point the finger outwards. How did Arjuna deal with this? Arjuna dealt with it in a different way. He shared what he was feeling. Openly, willingly shared. Hey, Krishna, I'm weak. I feel sorrow. I don't know what to do. Help me. How do I go through this? So these are the two methods that we confront. So the message here is situations are situations, but how we deal with those situations is entirely up to us. One method leads to inevitable failure. The second method leads to inevitable success. They are mathematically predictable. In fact, if you look at the mindset of Duryodhana on the battlefield and the mindset of Arjuna, right there, you could have predicted the war. So it's not a matter of this, mysticism now, be a prophet and predict what's going to happen. Just by looking at your mindset, you can already predict what's going to happen. Because the moment we step outside the boundaries of laws which cannot be broken, it ensures failure or success. So this failure or success, which is mathematically predictable, we will discuss further on next week. And then we will go into these fundamental questions into the nature of the individual. Okay, so before we go into the Gita, I'm going to give us this big vision, but there is a revelation. You need to do it in a proper order, right? So we're going to do that next week. Okay. Okay, let's close. Does anyone have any comments?
Just one thing. Andre?
Mm-hmm.
I think I mentioned to you about Dharmakshetra, the sequel episodes in Netflix.
Yeah.
Did I mention it to you?
Yeah.
It is very, very intriguing, the whole entire episode. The 26 episodes. And it starts off, it's all about Mahabharata.
Mm.
It's about after the death, after the war.
Mm.
And everyone has had some accusations. It's like a trial. And each one had to answer why they did what they did, according to the Mahabharata, including Krishna will come at the end. And he is also accused of some things. And he will then answer why this all took place. It's very, very interesting. It's similar to what you're saying today.
Yeah.
What was that called again, Ron?
Dharmakshetra.
How do you spell that last word?
Kshetra, like Kurukshetra. Dharmakshetra. Shetra. Dharma Kshetra.
Okay, thanks.
Dharmakshetra.
Thank you.
On Netflix. 26 episodes. Very interesting.
Okay. Okay, I'll close. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.